First Maccabees, chapter 13. Go ahead and read that as soon as you have it. 13 and 1, yeah, from the top.
First Maccabees chapter 13 and verse 1. Now when Simon heard that Tryphon had gathered together a great host to invade the land of Judea and destroy it, and saw that the people was in great trembling and fear, he went up to Jerusalem and gathered the people together, and gave them exhortation, saying, Ye yourselves know what great things I and my brethren and my father's house have done for the laws and the sanctuary, the battles also and troubles which we have seen.
Him and his brothers have had many of battles where they were outnumbered greatly, and because of their faith, and because of keeping these commandments, the Most High was with them and delivered them through when all odds were stacked against them. Go ahead and read.
By reason whereof all my brethren, excuse me, Khan, by reason whereof all my brethren are slain for Israel's sake, and I am left alone.
He was the last brother left after all of his other brothers were killed during this revolt, during the battle, trying to gain their independence. Go ahead.
Verse 5. Now therefore, be it far from me that I should spare mine own life in any time of trouble, for I am no better than my brethren.
He said, he's no better than his brethren. His brothers gave their lives. How could he not give his lives for the same cause, right? Read.
Doubtless, I will avenge my nation and the sanctuary and our wives and our children, for all the heathen are gathered to destroy us of very malice.
He said, you ain't got to worry about it. I got you. Go ahead.
Now, as soon as the people heard these words, their spirit revived. And they answered with a loud voice, saying, Thou shalt be our leader instead of Judas and Jonathan thy brother. Fight thou our battles, and whatsoever thou commandest us, that will we do.
So he was able to round up the people and get them on board. All right. So let's go ahead and continue to get some more information. Go ahead and with the PowerPoint.
At Hadid, he blocked the advance of Tryphon, who was attempting to enter the country and seize the throne of Syria. Since Tryphon could gain nothing by force, he demanded a ransom for Jonathan and the surrender of Jonathan's sons as hostages. Although Simon was fully aware that Tryphon would deceive him, both Josephus and First Maccabees state that he acceded to both demands so that the people might see that he had done everything possible for his brother. Jonathan was nevertheless treacherously assassinated, and the hostages were not returned. Simon thus became the sole leader of the people.
Read. There you go.
As an opponent of Diodotus Tryphon, Simon decided to side with the Seleucid king Demetrius II, to whom he sent a deputation requesting freedom from taxation for the country. The fact that his request was granted implied the recognition of the political independence of Judea. He became the first prince of the Hebrew Hasmonean dynasty. He reigned from 142 to 135 BC.
So he requested, freedom. He requested to be a sovereign nation, to be able to rule autonomously, and it was granted. So he was the forefather of the Hasmonean dynasty. Go ahead and read.
The Hasmonean dynasty was founded by a resolution adopted in 141 BC at a large assembly of the priests and the people and of the elders of the land, to the effect that Simon should be their leader and high priest forever, until there should arise a faithful prophet.
This is this is a big deal, right? It's been a while since King David's rule, where Israel was able to rule on their own land, and all of the things that they had gone through, all the battles and the tragedies to get to where they are now. I'm sure it was an incredible ceremony, right? And I can imagine that the people were overjoyed, right? Go ahead.
Recognition of the new dynasty by the Roman Republic was accorded by the Senate about 139 BC, when the delegation representing Simon was in Rome. Simon made the Jewish people semi independent of the Seleucid Empire. In February 135 BC, Simon and his two sons, Mattathias and Judah, were assassinated at a banquet at Doc by his son in law, Ptolemy, the Seleucid governor at Jericho.
So let's get that in the Bible, right? That's First Maccabees 16 and start at 1.
First Maccabees 16 and 1. Then came up John from Gezerah and told Simon his father what Senedibus had done. Wherefore Simon called his two eldest sons, Judas and John, and said unto them, I and my brethren and my father's house have ever from my youth unto this day fought against the enemies of Israel, and things have prospered so well in our hands that we have delivered Israel oftentimes. But now I am old, and ye, by God's mercy, are of a sufficient age. Be ye instead of me and my brother, and go and fight for our nation, and the help from heaven be with you.
So he's exhorting his sons just like his father exhorted him and his brothers, right? Let him know that hey, it's your guys' time to take up the battle, right? Read.
Verse 4. So he chose out of the country 20,000 men of war with horsemen, who went out against Sendebius and rested that night at Modin. And when, as they rose in the morning and went into the plain, behold, a mighty great host, both of footmen and horsemen, came against them. Howbeit, there was a water brook betwixt them.
Drop down to 9.
Verse 9. At that time was Judas, John's brother, wounded, but John still followed after them, until he came to Cedron, which Sendebius had built. So they fled even unto the towers in the fields of Azotus, wherefore he burned it with fire, so that there were slain of them about 2,000 men. Afterward he returned into the land of Judea in peace. Moreover, in the plain of Jericho was Ptolemaeus, the son of Abubus, made captain, and he had abundance of silver and gold, for he was the high priest's son-in-law. Wherefore, his heart being lifted up, he thought to get the country to himself, and thereupon consulted deceitfully against Simon and his sons to destroy them.
Read.
Now Simon was visiting the cities that were in the country, and taking care for the good ordering of them, at which time he came down himself to Jericho with his sons, Mattathias and Judas, in the 117th year, in the 11th month, called Sabbat.
So this is Simon and two of his three sons going to visit his son-in-law. No, yeah, his son-in-law. Read.
Verse 14. Now Simon, verse 15.
Come on.
Where the son of Abubus, receiving them deceitfully into a little hold, called Docus, which he had built, made them a great banquet. Howbeit he had hid men there. So when Simon and his sons had drunk largely, Ptolemy and his men rose up, and took their weapons, and came upon Simon into the banqueting place, and slew him, and his two sons, and certain of his servants. In which doing he committed a great treachery, and recompensed evil for good.
Read.
Then Ptolemy wrote these things and sent to the king that he should send him an host to aid him, and he would deliver him the country and cities.
So he's a traitor, right? He was a traitor against his people. Read.
He sent others also to Gezerah to kill John, and unto the tribunes he sent letters to come unto him, that he might give them silver and gold and rewards.
Right. So he was trying to take out the other brother, so that no one could challenge him for the throne. Right. Read.
Verse 20. And others he sent to take Jerusalem and the mountain of the temple. Now one had run afore to Jezreel and told John that his father and brethren were slain. And quoth he, Ptolemy had sent to slay thee also. Hereof, when he heard, he was sore astonished. So he laid hands on them that were come to destroy him, and slew them, for he knew that they sought to take him away. As concerning the rest of the acts of John, and his wars and worthy deeds which he did, and the building of the walls which he made in his doings, behold, these are written in the chronicles of his priesthood from the time he was made high priest after his father.
All right, so that is a synopsis of Simon, who is the first the father of the Hasmonean dynasty, right? So now we're going to read about his son, John Hyrcanus.
John Hyrcanus the First, 134 to 104 BCE, 30 years, expanded Judean territory and consolidated Hasmonean independence. John Hyrcanus, born 175 BC, died 104 BC, was a high priest and ruler of the Jewish nation from 135 134 to 104 BC. Under his reign, the Hasmonean kingdom of Judea and ancient Palestine attained power and great prosperity, and the Pharisees, a scholarly sect with popular backing, and the Sadducees, an aristocratic sect that compromised the priesthood, became well-defined religious parties. Hyrcanus was the youngest son of Simon Maccabeus, and thus a member of the Hasmonean dynasty, so called after an ancestor named Hasmoneus. In 137 BC, he and his brother Judas commanded the force that heroically repelled the invasion of Judea, led by Cenebius, the general of the Syrian king Antiochus VII Sidides. In 135, Hyrcanus' brother-in-law Ptolemy, the governor of Jericho, assassinated Hyrcanus' father and two elder brothers. Hyrcanus then succeeded to the high priesthood and the supreme authority in Judea. The remainder of Hyrcanus' reign was marked by his efforts to punish his enemies, ward off the Syrians, and enlarge Judea's boundaries. Although he struggled in vain to destroy Ptolemy, he successfully thwarted Syrian incursions by alliance with Rome and conquered the unfriendly neighboring territories of Samaria and Idumea, Edom. He forced Idumea to convert to Judaism, the first example of conversion imposed by the Jews in their history. Upon his death, Hyrcanus was succeeded by his eldest son, Aristobulus I. Hyrcanus' reign was the last under which Judea was a powerful, united state.
So Hyrcanus, he was able to fend off his assassination attempt, and he was able to rule well and expand the borders of the dynasty. But he was not able to avenge his brothers and his father's death. But he was the end of a powerful united state. Right after him, things kind of took a left, and they didn't get much better from there. Right. Let's read about Aristobulus the First.
Aristobulus the First, 104 to 103 BCE, 1 year. The first Hasmonean to declare himself king of Judea. Judah Aristobulus the First, or Aristobulus the First, Romanized Aristobulus, was the high priest of Israel and the first Hasmonean king of Judea, reigning from 104 BCE until his death the following year. He was the eldest of the 5 sons of John Hyrcanus, the previous leader. The Roman Jewish historian Josephus states that he was the first Jew in 483 years and 3 months to have established a monarchy since the return from the Babylonian captivity. Aristobulus was the first Hebrew king to claim both the high priesthood and the kingship. The Sadducees and the Essenes were not concerned about Aristobulus taking the title of king, but the Pharisees believed that the kingship could only be held by the descendants of the Davidic line, strongly opposed this.
So Aristobulus was a self-proclaimed king, right? Because as the Bible points out, the Pharisees were right in that the kings should only come from the line of David, right? Let's get that. That is Genesis 49:10, and I'll read it, right? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and until him shall the gathering of the people be, right? So this is Aristobulus taking it upon himself to name him king, right? He's a self-proclaimed king. The Most High was not dealing with that, right? Go ahead and read.
They launched a massive rebellion, but Aristobulus died before any attempt to dispose him could be made.
So the Pharisees, decided that they were going to go get after him, right? But, he passed on before they were able to get him, right? So let's go to Alexander Jannaeus.
Alexander Jannaeus, 103 to 76 BCE, 27 years. Significantly expanded the realm, but faced internal strife and civil conflicts. Alexander Jannaeus was the third son of John Hyrcanus by his second wife. When Aristobulus I, Hyrcanus' son, by his first wife became king, he deemed it necessary for his own security to imprison his half-brother. Aristobulus died after a reign of 1 year. Upon his death, his widow, Salome Alexandra, had Alexander and his brothers released from prison. One of these brothers is said to have unsuccessfully sought the throne. Alexander, as the oldest living brother, had the right not only to the throne, but also to Salome, the widow of his deceased brother, who had died childless. And although she was 13 years older than him, he married her in accordance with Jewish law.
So let's get the Jewish law. It's Deuteronomy 25:5. If brethren dwell, testing. If brethren dwell together, and one of them die and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her. So that's the law. So we can see that Alexander Jannaeus was practicing the Jewish law, right, and according to the law of the Most High. So he took his brother's wife, Salome Alexandra, as his wife, as according to law, right? Go ahead and back to the presentation. Go ahead.
Alexander Jannaeus. By her, he had 2 sons. The eldest, Hyrcanus II, became high priest in 62 BCE, and Aristobulus II, who was high priest from 66 to 62 BCE, and started a bloody civil war with his brother, ending in his capture by Pompey the Great. Like his brother, Alexander was an avid supporter of the aristocratic priestly faction known as the Sadducees. His wife Salome came from a Pharisaic family. Her brother was Simeon ben Shattak, a famous Pharisee leader. Salome was more sympathetic to their cause and protected them throughout his turbulent reign. Like his father, Alexander served as high priest. This raised the ire of the Pharisees, who insisted that these two offices should not be combined. According to the Talmud, Alexander was a questionable desecrated priest. Rumor had it that his mother was captured in Modin and violated, and, in the opinion of the Pharisees, was not allowed to serve in the temple. This infuriated the king, and he sided with the Sadducees, who defended him. This incident led the king to turn against the Pharisees, and he persecuted them until his death. Alexander's reign ended with a significant political decision, naming his wife as successor and granting her the authority to appoint the next high priest.
So he ended up, getting sick and battling with alcoholism for the past for his last 3 years, and ended up dying and naming his wife Salome Alexandra as his successor. So let's read about Salome.
Salome Alexandra, 76 to 67 BCE, 9 years. A rare female ruler, maintained relative peace and supported Pharisaic influence. Salome Alexandra's reign was shaped by a complex tapestry of internal political maneuvering and religious realignment. Prior to ruling in her own right, she wielded influence as the consort of Alexander Jannaeus, and according to later accounts, she was instrumental in securing his position by convincing him that his brother Antigonus posed a threat. This led to Antigonus's assassination and removed a key rival, ensuring that Alexander's succession and her own subsequent rise to power would be less contested. When she took the throne following Alexander's death, Salome Alexandra successfully brought a measure of stability to the fractious kingdom. She managed to reconcile the Pharisees, who had suffered under Alexander, granting them unprecedented authority in religious and judicial matters. The reestablishment of the Sanhedrin under their guidance and the appointment of her oldest son, Hyrcanus II, as high priest helped restore the community's faith in an orderly and judicious administration. Her final years as ruler were clouded by renewed internal strife. Even as she strengthened the Pharisees' position and sought to govern justly, her younger son, Aristobulus II, strove to wrest control of the kingdom. Although her rule would ultimately end amidst this familial power struggle, Salome Alexandra's reign remains a pivotal moment in the history of the Hasmonean dynasty, one that was defined by cunning political survival, rebalanced religious authority, and lingering undercurrents of internal conflict.
Salome Alexandra her reign was quite a little more peaceful than it had been for some time, right? She was able to restore the Sanhedrin, which was it was a judicial and administrative body that served as a legislative and judicial assembly, right? It was composed of Pharisees and Sadducees, right? And they would judge Israel, right? And she was instrumental in that, in putting that together. So the next ruler is John Hyrcanus II. This is the eldest son of Alexander Jannaeus. Go ahead and read.
Hyrcanus II, 67 to 66 BCE, 1 year. Brief initial rule before being usurped by his brother. Hyrcanus was the eldest son of Alexander Jannaeus, king and high priest, and Alexandra Salome. After the death of Alexander in 76 BCE, his widow succeeded to the rule of Judea and installed her elder son Hyrcanus as high priest. Alexander had numerous conflicts with the Pharisees. However, Hyrcanus was supported by the Pharisees, especially later in his tenure. When Salome died in 67 BCE, she named Hyrcanus as her successor and ruler of Judea as well. But soon, he and his younger brother, Aristobulus II, began fighting over who had the right to the throne. Hyrcanus had scarcely reigned 3 months when Aristobulus II rose in rebellion. Hyrcanus advanced against him at the head of his mercenaries and his followers. The brothers met in a battle near Jericho, with many of Hyrcanus' soldiers going over to Aristobulus II and thereby giving victory to the latter. Hyrcanus took refuge in the citadel of Jerusalem, but the capture of the temple by Aristobulus II compelled Hyrcanus to surrender. A peace was then concluded in which Hyrcanus was to renounce the throne and the office of high priest, but was to enjoy the revenues of the latter office.
So he had a very short reign before his brother was able to overcome him, right? Aristobulus II. Go ahead and read.
Aristobulus II, 66 to 63 BCE, contended with her for power, eventually lost due to Roman intervention. Aristobulus II was the last of the Hasmonean Maccabean kings of Judea. On the death 67 BC of his mother, Salome Alexandra, he succeeded to the throne, defeating his brother and rival, John Hyrcanus II. When Hyrcanus sought help from the Nabateans, the Romans under Pompey intervened and subjected Judea to their rule in 63 BC. After an unsuccessful attempt to regain power in 56, Aristobulus was sent to Rome as a prisoner and remained there until his death.
All right, let's continue on with John Hyrcanus II. This is when he was he was put in as a leader, right? We'll read more about that. Go ahead.
Hyrcanus II, Restoration, 64 to 40 BCE, 23 years. Reinstalled as a Roman client ruler with diminished autonomy. By around 63 BCE, Hyrcanus had been restored to his position as high priest, but not to the kingship. Political authority rested with the Romans, whose interests were represented by Antipater, who primarily promoted the interests of his own house. In 47 BCE, Julius Caesar restored some political authority to Hyrcanus by appointing him ethnarch. This, however, had little practical effect since Hyrcanus yielded to Antipater in everything. In 40 BCE, Aristobulus' son, Antigonus Mattathias, allied himself with the Parthians and was proclaimed king and high priest. Hyrcanus was seized and his ears mutilated. According to Josephus, Antigonus bit his uncle's ears off to make him permanently ineligible for the priesthood.
So, go ahead and read.
Then Hyrcanus was taken by the Parthians into captivity in Babylonia, where he lived for 4 years amid the Babylonian Jews, who paid him every mark of respect. In 36 BCE, Herod I, who had vanquished Antigonus with Roman help and feared that Hyrcanus might persuade the Parthians to help him regain the throne, invited the former high priest to return to Jerusalem. Hyrcanus accepted, and Herod received him with every mark of respect, assigning to him the first place at his table and the presidency of the state council. However, in 30 BCE, Herod charged Hyrcanus with plotting with the Nabateans and put him to death.
So that was John Hyrcanus' second rule with much diminished power, right? And now we're going to read about Antigonus II Mattathias.
40 to 37 BCE, 3 years. Last Hasmonean ruler, disposed and executed by the Romans ending Hasmonean sovereignty.
So this was the last leader of the Hasmonean dynasty, right? Let's read about it.
Antigonus was the second son of Aristobulus II, and together with his father were carried off to Rome as prisoners by Pompey in 63 BCE. Antigonus eventually escaped and returned to Judea in 57 BCE. Despite an unsuccessful attempt to oppose the Roman forces there, the Senate released him, yet he refused to surrender his dynastic rights. After the death of his older brother Alexander, Antigonus claimed that his uncle Hyrcanus II was a puppet of Antipater the Idumean and attempted to overthrow him with the help and consent of the Romans. He visited Julius Caesar, who was in Syria in 47 BCE, and complained of the usurpation of Antipater and Hyrcanus II. In 42 BCE, he attempted to seize the government of Judea by force with the assistance of his brother-in-law, Ptolemy, son of Menneus, but was defeated by Herod.
So he wasn't ever able to wrestle control back from Herod, right? Let's read.
The excessive taxation wrung from the people to pay for the extravagances of Mark Antony and Cleopatra had inspired a deep hatred against Rome. Antigonus gained the allegiance of both the aristocratic class in Jerusalem and the leaders of the Pharisees. The Parthians, who invaded Syria in 40 BCE, preferred to see an anti-Roman ruler on the throne of Judea. When Antigonus promised them large sums of gold as well as 500 female slaves, the Parthians put 500 warriors at his disposal. After Antigonus, with Parthian help, conquered Jerusalem, Hyrcanus was sent to Babylon after his ears mutilated, which rendered him unfit for the office of high priest of Israel. Herod fled from Jerusalem, and in 40 BCE, Antigonus was officially proclaimed king and high priest by the Parthians.
So after he was able to align with the Parthians, who I guess loaned him 500 warriors for his gifts of slaves and large sums of gold, he was able to run off Herod and was officially proclaimed king and high priest by the Parthians, right? Let's continue to read. Go ahead.
Following the conquest of Jerusalem by the Parthians, Herod fled quickly from Masada to Rome, where he was nominated in 40 BCE as Judea's allied king and friend of the Roman people. By the Senate on the recommendation of the Truvimir Mark Antony. On Herod's return to Judea from Rome in 39 BCE, he opened a campaign against Antigonus and laid siege in Jerusalem. In the spring of 38 BCE, Herod wrested control of the province of Galilee and eventually all of Judea except for Jerusalem. Due to the approach of winter, Herod postponed his siege of Jerusalem, where Antigonus and the remnants of his army took refuge until spring. Herod and a supporting Roman army were kept out of Jerusalem for 3 to 5 months, but the Romans eventually captured the city. The supporters of Antigonus fought until the Romans reached the inner courtyard of the temple. Antigonus was taken to Antioch and executed, ending Hasmonean rule.
So this is the end of the Hasmonean rule. Herod eventually returned with help from the Roman army, and the Romans were able to overcome Antigonus, and they destroyed the land, and that was the last that we were able to rule in our own land. I hope this was informational. I hope this was edifying. Don't forget to continue to tune into all of our classes. We've got classes just about every night. We also have several classes on Friday and Sabbath. So make sure to tune in. Make sure to continue to like and share the classes. And continue to keep these laws. With that, I say shalom.